Good morning everyone and welcome to today's assembly. I'd like to talk to you today about something a little bit unusual, a bit different. I'd like to talk to you about museums. I think you'll find just how exciting, inspiring and actually how controversial museums can be. And the more I've looked into it in preparation for this assembly, the more I've come to realise just how enriching and life-affirming museums actually are. So every year on the 18th of May, people around the world celebrate International Museums Day. It's a chance to appreciate what museums do and to ask some big questions about what they're for, how they shape the way we see history, culture, science, and even ourselves. So I started thinking about how this topic would tie in with our heart values. And if we thought about museums as a way of enriching culture, enriching our own experience of life, and developing an understanding of other people, understanding, cooperation and peace, then all of those ideas would link really well to our core values, particularly of empathy, ambition, respect and tolerance. So that makes it a really appropriate topic to talk about with you today in terms of our assembly. So the writer Ray Bradbury, who you might know from writing books like Fahrenheit 451, he said that we should stuff our eyes with wonder. I think that's such a great idea. What are the most amazing things that we could see in life? If we've got a limited time in the world, what are the things that we would want to see to help us to enrich our lives and to understand the world around us? So I'm going to ask you to think about what is the best thing that you have ever seen in a museum, and think that through as I'm going through the rest of the assembly. Because I gave that a bit of thought from my perspective, and I wondered about the things that I've seen in museums over my life and what are the best things that I think I've seen. I've narrowed it down to 3. There are lots more that I could have included, but I've narrowed it down to 3, and I'm going to share them in order that I saw them in my life. So the first one that I saw was the Bayeux Tapestry in the Bayeux Museum in Normandy. It was just so incredible to stand in front of this long, very thin tapestry stretched all around the room, and you sort of walked along it reading the story of the Battle of Hastings as you went along. And it was so incredible to be so close to an artefact which really recorded such an important moment in history. So that was the first thing that came to my mind. The second thing was the Rosetta Stone, and it probably doesn't look like much on this screen, but as somebody who studied English at university, this was something that I'd read about so many times, but I'd never seen it and I'd never been able to picture what it really looked like. It's so important because it's got the same text written in 3 different scripts on different sides of the stone, and it was really pivotal in helping scholars to understand and to translate hieroglyphics. So in terms of literary history and the history of Egypt and understanding the heritage of Egypt, it's just such an important item. So the first time I saw that in the British Museum, it just blew my mind. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is something that I saw quite recently, actually, and it was really local. It was at Whitby Abbey, and there's an old abbey that used to exist before the sort of stone abbey that you can see now. There used to be a very old one in the 7th century, and I went there as part of the sort of, I was interested in finding more about the Dark Ages and what life was like in those early years. It's not really called the Dark Ages anymore. I know historians will dispute that. But back in the day, it was not seen as a time when there was a huge amount of technology or learning or literature. But actually, from that museum, they'd found some amazing artefacts from under the existing abbey. And some of that was some amazing blue stained glass, which helped us to see that actually in those times when we thought maybe the technology wasn't quite as advanced as we'd expected, actually stained glass did exist and was used in those monasteries back in the day. And it made me wonder about what other assumptions we've made about people in the past. And I think it's always good to keep open-minded and prepared to be surprised about what you find out about the world. So that amazed me because it was so near to us and such a sort of revelation in terms of the way I saw that period of history. So I suppose if we think about what museums are for, well, they do lots of things. They preserve, they educate, and they inspire us by stimulating our curiosity and our creativity. So their mission is really wide-ranging and very exciting. So I started thinking about what are the kind of things that we could see near to us in York. We're really lucky in the UK. We've got over 2,000 amazing museums, but we've got over 20 in York alone. And it's home to some really, truly fantastic museums. So I was thinking about what could we see? We could walk into York right now, walk into some museums. What are the things on our doorstep, free of charge, that we could see? So did you know that Driffield Terrace in York is sometimes referred to by archaeologists as a gladiator graveyard? It contains over 80 skeletons, many of which exhibited signs of violent injuries. And this supports the theory that these people were gladiators who died in combat here in York, maybe during public spectacles. Did you also know that some of those skeletons, or one of those skeletons in particular, was found to have bite marks on his bones consistent with those of a large cat, most likely a lion? And those injuries, which were unhealed at the time of his death, suggested that he probably died from that attack, and therefore it's interpreted as being the first physical evidence of a human being fighting a lion in the whole Roman Empire. And that happened right here in York. And you can see that skeleton if you want to. It's at Dig, which is associated with Jorvik. It's at St Saviour Gate, and the skeleton will be on display until June the 20th of this year. And it's a really rare opportunity to connect with a piece of Roman history which shows us something about the reality of gladiatorial combat in ancient Britain. What else can we see in York? Again, on that, in line with our Roman heritage, there's this amazing mosaic which is available in the York Museum, the Yorkshire Museum. We don't really know how old it is, but it's supposed to depict the four seasons, and as part of a larger complex of a very wealthy house or villa, which had 3 other massive mosaics in it as well. What else can we see in York then? This is a pair of Viking ice skates, which you can see in the Jorvik Museum if you are interested in that. You can go to the Railway Museum, which is absolutely free of charge. You can even walk through the carriages of this bullet train or Shinkansen, which you can see there. There's a Castle Museum, which is free to York residents if you're under 16. And if you go there, you can visit the cell of condemned prisoners who were you could perhaps relive their final days. Apparently, the famous highwayman Dick Turpin ended his life here. You could go to the Yorkshire Museum and see dinosaur bones. There's a medieval townhouse that's been reconstructed that you can go inside at Barley Hall. York Art Gallery, which again is free to York residents under 16, recently displayed famous artwork by Monet and by William Morris. And slightly further afield, if you wanted to go to York, there's an Armories Museum where you can see armour created for Japanese samurai, and you can watch recreations of battles. Further afield, you might have visited some of these incredible museums: the London Natural History Museum, the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester, the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool, or the National Museum of Scotland, which has got everything from ancient mummies to Dolly the sheep, which is the first cloned mammal. So an incredible world of opportunity and interesting, wonderful things to look at, which are being provided by museums up and down the UK, and some of them right here on our doorstep. But not everything about museums is simple. So let's talk about one of the biggest debates happening right now, which is who owns the past? Who has the right to own these artefacts from the past and to display them in museums? There's a huge debate over those artefacts that were taken particularly during colonial times, and many famous museum objects were taken during the British Empire, sometimes during wars or even when countries were under colonial rule. So, for example, there's the Benin bronzes, beautiful sculptures from what is now Nigeria. They were taken by British soldiers in 1897 and have ended up in museums in London, Oxford and elsewhere. Or the Parthenon marbles, taken from Greece in the 1800s. Greece has been asking for them back for decades. So the big question is, should museums return these objects to the countries they come from? Some people say yes, because it's about justice and respecting history. Other people say no, because museums should be international and share global culture. There's no easy answer, but it's an important conversation, and you're the next generation to carry that forward. Another big issue for museums is who are museums for? Some people have felt left out of the stories being told. People from working class backgrounds, people of colour, LGBTQ+ people, or those with disabilities. But now museums are working hard to be more inclusive, telling more diverse stories and making sure everyone feels represented. Some are even asking communities to co-create exhibitions, to be curators and to contribute rather than just visiting in a passive way. There are future challenges for museums as well. During the pandemic, many museums struggled and some of them had to close, and sometimes they've not even reopened afterwards. They had to adapt with online tours, virtual reality exhibitions, and creative social media. Funding's a really big issue too. Museums need public support to stay open, to care for their collections and to keep evolving. But lots of them are rising to the challenge. They're becoming more interactive, more community focused and more innovative than ever before. So in terms of final thoughts then, what can you do? You can get involved. Next time you pass a museum in your town or online even, you can ask yourself what stories are being told here and whose voices are maybe being left out. Museums are places of wonder. They're places of questioning, of discovery and justice. They belong to all of us, and they need your curiosity to stay alive. So to mark International Museums Day, there are a series of events taking place around York which specifically celebrate our Roman heritage. It's called Ecce Romani, or Look, Romans. Why not explore one of these events and see where it takes you? On the screen now you can see a list of things which are happening over the half-term holiday, from living history displays, there's a military parade, there's a Roman treasure hunt, a living history exhibition at York Minster, and a walk and talk around Coney Street. And all the information about those events is on the Yorkshire Museum website, and many of them are free to attend. So I hope you find those interesting and take yourself along. So thank you for listening to this assembly this morning. I'm going to remind you that museums are not just about the past, they're also about understanding our present and shaping our future. I'm going to encourage you to stay curious and to continue to seek out wondrous sights and things that inform you about the world. And I'm going to leave you with this discussion point. 2 things to think about. What's the best thing you've ever seen in a museum? And secondly, what would you like to see in a museum? And if you see me around school, then feel free to let me know your thoughts on this matter. Thanks so much for your time.